It was a cold October night when I found myself driving along a lonely stretch of highway. The clock on the dashboard blinked 11:57 p.m. in harsh red digits, and the darkness outside seemed to swallow the world whole. The road stretched out like an endless ribbon, my headlights slicing through the black. I hadn't passed another car for at least an hour, and the thought of getting home to my warm bed felt like the only thing keeping me awake. I had taken a wrong turn somewhere, I was sure of it. But my GPS had lost signal miles back, leaving me with nothing but instinct and the faint glimmer of the moon. Every mile seemed to stretch longer than the last, as if the road itself was shifting beneath my wheels. The yellow lines on the asphalt flickered in and out of view, hypnotizing me. I shook my head to clear it, blasting the air conditioning in an effort to stay alert. That's when I saw the figure. It appeared suddenly on the side of the road, barely visible in the glow of my headlights. A lone man, standing by the guardrail. He was facing away from me, his clothes tattered and his posture slouched. As I passed, I couldn't help but glance at him. He didn't move, didn't acknowledge my car at all. I shuddered and told myself it was probably just a hitchhiker. Maybe someone whose car had broken down, I thought. But something about the way he stood, so still and stiff, gnawed at me. A mile later, I saw him again. The same man, or at least someone who looked identical to him. This time he was closer to the edge of the road, just within the beam of my headlights. I could see his face now, ashen, hollow-cheeked, and his eyes seemed to look right through me, as if I wasn't even there. My stomach tightened, and I hit the gas a little harder. It wasn't possible. He couldn't have gotten ahead of me, not without a car of his own, and I hadn't passed any side roads. Yet as I kept driving, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone on this road. The highway twisted and turned, climbing upward through dense woods, the tall pines lining the road like silent sentinels. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. But the air felt thicker now, colder. My breath came out in wisps, fogging the windshield slightly. I was just reaching for the defroster when I saw him again, standing right in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt just a few feet from the figure. Heart pounding, I stared at him. He stood motionless, staring back at me with those empty eyes. I hesitated, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I didn't know whether to honk, shout, or throw the car into reverse. Before I could decide, he slowly raised one arm and pointed down the road. I don't know why, but something compelled me to follow his gesture. I drove forward slowly, edging around him. As I passed, I glanced back in the rearview mirror, and he was gone. No trace of him, no shadow lingering on the asphalt. Just gone. I tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks. It was late, I was tired, and my imagination was running wild. But as the minutes crawled by, a new dread began to creep over me. I noticed the gas gauge needle dipping lower than it should have been. I had filled the tank just before starting this trip, and the miles continued to stretch endlessly. It felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, as though the road was looping back on itself, an inescapable labyrinth. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the headlights flickered, then dimmed. Panic surged through me. I hit the switch frantically, trying to force them back on, and for a brief moment, the darkness seemed to breathe in around me. Then the lights returned, but much dimmer than before. That's when I saw him again, right there in the middle of the road, only this time much closer. My breath caught in my throat. I veered to the side instinctively, and the car's tires skidded on the loose gravel of the shoulder. I fought to regain control, but the car spun out, the rear end fishtailing before finally coming to a halt. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to catch my breath. There was no sign of him in the rearview mirror now. Had I imagined it? I reached for my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. The dread that had been slowly building in the pit of my stomach blossomed into full-blown fear. I didn't want to leave the car, but sitting there, stranded in the middle of nowhere, didn't feel any safer. Taking a deep breath, I decided to continue on foot. Maybe I could find a house or a gas station nearby. As I stepped onto the road, the air seemed to press in on me, cold and heavy. Every step echoed unnaturally, as if the night was listening.